This podcast is part of E2C Network, where we share the whole Auburn experience.
War Eagle Auburn fans, welcome to No Huddle, your source for Auburn football news and discussion, part of the E2C Network. I'm AJ Richardson, and I'm also here with Jared Davis. The Auburn Tigers took on Georgia, and just about I feel like almost everybody, even probably the players to some extent, knew this game was going to be really tough. This game did not turn out in Auburn's favor. Auburn lost 13-31 against Georgia in Athens. There were definitely, at this point in the season, of 2-4, and not where anybody thought we would be. But yet, there's still some glimmers of hope, and we'll definitely be talking about some of those of progress and moving forward in this rebuild at Auburn University for their football program under Hugh Freeze. Jared, how you doing? How you hanging in there after another tough loss this season?
Sadly, I'm okay. That's the problem.
Are you apathetic? Is that a good word?
Yeah, that's kind of what made you think with that. I don't know that it's apathetic, but it's like the game went like I thought it was going to go.
Yeah.
I don't know what I told you, but I told a Georgia buddy of mine, he was feeling a little nervous. I'm like, it's probably going to be 28-14. And it was 31-13.
Yeah.
So, it was about what I anticipated.
Yeah. And yours and my score predictions were not that far off. I think I had Georgia winning by 17. They won by 18. You had Georgia winning by 13. So, it's in the grand scheme of things, you take yourself out of the game a little bit. And I don't think it's nearly as bad. What stinks, and I heard Hugh Freeze say this, it's like stacking the recruiting classes is super important, and Georgia has been able to put top 10 after top 10 after top 10 recruiting class together, and Auburn over the last few years has struggled. We finally got one last year, but it's been a while since we've had that top tier talent, and I think that's the big difference here, just talent level wise. And as much as Auburn, I think, played honestly pretty solid, no turnovers. We handled the ball pretty well. We had some drives. But, at the end of the day, when you're playing Georgia in Athens, you have to be better than just good and just handling the ball. You have to honestly kind of I heard people say, make your own luck or whatever. Create your own opportunities. In my view of, cause some turnovers and whatnot. And that's maybe one thing that's kind of interesting is our defense. They've been playing like that bend but don't break kind of defense. And one thing that I loved about Kevin Steele and a few other offensive or defensive coordinators that Auburn's had in the past have just been, we're going to cause turnovers. And for some reason our defense hasn't really been doing that a bunch. So maybe that's and I thought DJ Durkin was going to bring that with this high energy, but apparently not. It's I feel like 6 games into the season, I feel like we kind of see what our defense is, and they're not bad, but they're also not fantastic either.
Yeah, so you talked about stacking talent, right? And if you look in the NFL this past week, you're talking about it's been a while. Well, it was probably the year we got Tank. So Tank had a great game in the NFL this week. Bo Nix had a good game in the NFL. So, it's been a while since we've had NFL talent on this team. And then you look at Keldrick Falk and you're like, that guy's an NFL player, and he's making plays.
Yeah, and he's only 19 years old or whatever.
Yeah. You look at Keandre Lambert-Smith, you're like, that guy's going to play in the NFL, and he's making plays. Oh, yeah. And so you look around, and the problem is we have maybe 4 of those guys, and Georgia probably has 14 of those guys, that are going to play in the NFL. And that does not excuse your Arkansas and Cal game, although Arkansas did beat Tennessee, and I think Arkansas is better than we thought, and so it's a razor thin, you can't make mistakes because we weren't so much better than Arkansas talent-wise. So ultimately, when I look at those players and I look at Keldrick Falk, I'm like, that's what it is. That's what it means to stack talent. If you had 4 of those guys on the defensive line,
Oh, 100%. It's we're talking about not worrying about like Jalen McLeod and Keldrick Falk being all banged up and stuff, which at this point in the season they're getting banged up. You're talking about, who's the next 5-star up behind them? That's where Georgia's at. That's where Alabama's at. And Auburn is trying to get there, and I think they're getting there. I mean, what did I see? We were up to like the third rank in the recruiting class for this next year, 2025, and I'm like, that's wild to me. I mean, we're 2-4 at this point. I mean, I know it's still got some time, but hey, early December is the early signing period, so we're only a couple months away from that. And unless some crazy stuff happens where people start decommitting, Auburn's got a good chance of having some good recruiting classes for this year and then even 2026. Same kind of thing there.
There are very few teams that finish like top 8 3 years in a row in recruiting that just aren't good. And I think the list begins and ends with Jimbo Fisher. So if you can hold this class together and then hold 26 together, I mean, it'd be surprising to me if he wasn't good. I mean, he needs to win now. I want him to win now, but at the bare minimum, if he holds this class together and then you do it again next year, now you're talking about, all right, we've got a consistent pipeline here. You keep building on that. I mean, we think about it. This is not making an excuse. I have been disappointed in Hughes coaching right now, but unless I'm mistaken, I think the 2021 class, Jarquez is the only player left from that class. Am I wrong in that?
It's probably around that. It would not shock me.
I mean, that's probation right there is what that is.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. It's either Quez and maybe a few more, but I'm pretty sure I heard Jarquez. One player left from a high school recruiting class, even in the transfer portal era. That's just not good.
No, and I think you see obviously the transfer portal is good, it's helpful, but when you get super young guys like Auburn's getting, and you put them in your system, like you're seeing Keldrick Falk, for example, this is his second year in college football, and he's already starting to look like an NFL type player at the age of whatever 19 years old he's at. So that's the kind of thing where if you start building, in my mind, we talked about it last time. Sometimes it's just about having a winning culture, and sometimes young guys who've come from the high school ranks and done really well, had really good winning high school football teams, come to college and they expect to win. And nothing against our old guys, but they've been around for a while, and guess what? Auburn has not had a winning season in a while, and that's the tough thing, because like, as much as you want to rely on the older guys for their leadership, they just haven't won a ton in college football. And sometimes you need that energy from the younger guys. And if you make a flip, maybe some point into the season or early next season, and start winning a lot of games, winning some games you may not have supposed to have won, I think you see the culture start to shift. And I think that's, for us as Auburn fans, something to keep looking out for, because again, we're in a rebuild, and I think the culture needs to shift from that, like we keep finding ways to lose a game, into, hey, we can find a way to win this game. If you can make that flip, man, you're well on your way. So any other thoughts on maybe some cultural things that you may be seeing in what's going on with Auburn?
Yeah, I mean, you do. I mean, winning is an attitude, and winners just find ways to win, and it does become contagious, and it'll click. I mean, everybody. Listen, I've had my panic moments. Everybody's panicked. Are we ever going to win again? Yes, we are. And the reality is, if we get to December and we slip all the way down to 20 in recruiting, okay, maybe panic. But even if we stay top 10, we're going to lose some. Everybody loses some.
Oh, yeah.
If we stay top 10, if you stack top 10 classes, you can win.
Oh, yeah.
You need to be in that top 8 to 5 range to probably consistently be fighting for a championship. But you stack 3 top 10 classes in a row, and now you're talking about, okay, now you're a quarterback away from making it. You get in that top 8 to 5 range, you can have an average quarterback and everybody around him so good. So,
Yeah.
it's. I think we're going to be okay. I am not satisfied with this year. I really hate the fact we let 3 games get away from us.
Yeah.
But we did. Nothing we can do about it. We did. I think, believe it or not, I think we're getting better.
I know, right? Like I take myself back to like the moment of obviously the loss at Cal or against Cal was like really tough, but is the team now in a better spot than we were against Cal? And I am completely convinced that we are better at almost every single aspect: offense, defense, special teams, quarterback play, figuring out how to use the running backs, using the wide receivers better. Like everything is better. And obviously the wins aren't coming to us, and for good reason. College football is about winning in football, and you have to win. If you're not winning, that's who your team is, even if you are getting better throughout the season.
Are you trying to say if you ain't first, you're last? That's what it sounded like.
I don't want to look at the SEC standings right now, but I think we are probably last.
Oh, we are. Yeah, no. Well, the way you were saying it is a little Talladega Nights-esque. If you ain't first, you're last.
It's true.
No, I think we are last. I did want to bring up a point. You talked about the transfer portal, and I think what we've kind of forgotten on this, and I know I'm sounding very apologetic. Listen, I am not. I'm very upset. But somebody raised a good point. Like, other teams get better because of the portal as well. So, yeah, you're like, oh, this should have been a quick turnaround. Auburn can get people in the portal. We did. But guess what? Arkansas went and got the Boise State quarterback. And while he's not a fantastic quarterback, he's very athletic, very mobile, he was the difference maker in that game.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know what I'm saying? Like, they went and got a quarterback in the portal. And they beat us probably because of that.
Yep.
So, like, everybody gets better in the portal. Vanderbilt does not beat Alabama if they don't go get New Mexico State's quarterback.
My gosh, Pavia. Let's just have a moment for Pavia. As an Auburn fan, I hated the dude, and now he's like one of my favorite people ever, just because he beat Bama.
That kid. There was a guy in March Madness, the first 2 games, that like shot up the NIL value. Like he became I can't remember what small school he's from. Pavia's in that boat right now. Like he could do any commercial right now. I mean, he's pretty famous at the moment.
Yeah. The one thing.
But anyways, everybody gets better because of the portal.
I wanted to say this because I just thought it was ridiculous. When he was asked at the post-game presser or like right after the game, he's asked, "Hey man, how are you feeling?" Whatever, and he's all the fans are rushing the field, and he's in the middle of it, and he's like, "I want to praise God," and then he drops an F-bomb, and we're like, "What?"
I know. We thought the exact same
kidding
thing.
me?
My wife looked at me. She's like, "Did he really just say that?" Like, not
what?
like we're all adults, but it was, she's like, "Did he say what I think he said?" I think he did.
It was so wild to me. Anyway, was not
so
expecting
funny.
that. I had to double take
and
on that.
The ESPN lady just kept going with it.
Oh
like,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Right.
She's like, "Alrighty, they're gonna have to bleep that one out."
Yeah, that was crazy.
That was fun. Just a moment for appreciation for any team beating Alabama, but let's be honest, it's Vandy, and that was truly incredible for Vandy to do that. I mean, they led. I think if it wasn't the whole game, it was most of the game against Alabama. That's wild to me. I mean, again, if you're talking about like Auburn's talent level difference to like Georgia, right? Vandy's talent level to Alabama, literally probably one of the best, if not the most stacked classes back to back to back to back in the nation. Compare that to Vandy. Vandy they shocked the world in every way possible.
2 things. Somebody sent me something. They said Nick Saban gave up 13 points to Alabama total. Ever.
You mean to Vandy?
And to Vandy, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you. Nick Saban gave up 13 points total to Vandy, if that's a true stat. And then another meme was Ryan Williams is the first 17-year-old to ever lose to Vanderbilt. I thought that was pretty good.
That's good. I appreciate that person whoever wrote that.
Yeah.
So let's kind of turn our attention back to Georgia just for a little bit, because while I think there's the rebuild going on, I think we still need to obviously focus in on what can we do this season in the second half of the season. We're about to have a bye week, which is great. let the players rest up. But I think this is going to be a key turning point, not only for the fans of like what's coming for the rest of the season, but obviously for the players. Like, how are you going to change from what we've been and get even better? Because we have to keep getting better and find ways to win. I mean, in my mind, it comes down to a couple things. Obviously, the execution pieces of it. Even against Georgia, we had a missed touchdown with Malcolm Simmons. I'm not blaming him or anything. That was a tough pass over his shoulder. But sometimes in big moments like that, if you want to win, you have to make the big play. And we made lots of big plays. I'm thinking about the rollout to KLS. That was kind of, I think, in the second quarter or so. Beautiful pass from Peyton Thorne. Like, those are clutch plays you have to make to keep the drive going. I think it was like on a 4th and 10 or something crazy. So what do we do? Like, Jared, what do you think we need to do, to take what we've learned from Georgia and, potentially, have some upsets in the second half of the season?
Yeah, I mean, real quick I want to talk about the Georgia game real quick. I go back and look, and I'm like, man, if, and this whole season is if we don't have 12 men on the field, I don't know. That may be 3-0 going into halftime. Auburn.
Yeah, it could be.
Because
true.
As soon as that 12-man, penalty, I looked at my wife and I said they're going to score a touchdown.
Yep.
It's just how it goes, and they did.
That's the way it's been going for Auburn.
And they did. And then, so that doesn't happen. And then, I feel like we probably mismanaged at the end of the half there to keep them from getting the ball back. But okay, they got the ball back, and then they throw the ball.
It was like 50 seconds left, which that's not a lot of time, but Georgia gets the ball back.
They throw the ball to the wrong guy, and the other guy catches it, and our whole team is like confused because they're guarding where the ball's going, and he walks in, and I'm like, we are just cursed, man. I'm like, this is just,
I know.
Like, that literally should have probably bare minimum been 10-3. If we don't have the penalty to start the first drive out, it could be, who knows, 3-0. And it's a different ball game, man. And then you talk about the Simmons miss, you talk about the 4th and 1. Here's what I will add on this. I did think that our game plan was to go in there and just not get embarrassed. And I would have liked it to have been a little more wide open. A little
more like
options.
Aggressive. Like,
yes.
And like, I remember like an interview with Gus Malzahn. Like, he ate, slept, and breathed. I know everybody's got their opinion about him, but like, he loved football. And he particularly like talked about, I went to an interview, like a thing he did, and he specifically talked about the rivalries, Georgia and Alabama, because like those are the rivalry games that like your fan base will remember forever for you. And so you have to focus in on those. And so like he would specifically, like Gus Malzahn would cook up plays specifically for Georgia, for Alabama. And I'm sure we did have a few of those, right? I mean, but it wasn't like, oh, wow, that was the special play that we've been practicing all this time against Georgia. Now we pull it out. Here we go. And it worked great. Like, that's the kind of tough thing that I'm like, I want that. I want that, like, fire. And I hope, like you said, maybe it wasn't the worst game plan, but I want more. I want more out of the coaches to, like, put us in better opportunities to, like, potentially, make it a tough battle against Georgia.
Here's my thing. Like, you got to get KLS more touches. I mean, just put the ball in the guy's hands.
And he already had, like, 7 catches, but I'm like, he could use more.
Yeah, it needs to be over 10. And you got to go to Cam Moore. Like, to me, Cam's playing like a freshman. But you got to you're putting him out there every play. You got to go to him. Like, he's going to win 50-50 balls more chances than not. He missed the one in the end zone. Throw him another one. You know what I'm saying? Like, just try it, man. Like, to go. Here's the crazy thing. I think the game plan for Georgia might actually go beat Missouri. I think that conservative game plan, take a couple shots, might beat Missouri. It was not going to beat Georgia. And I felt like we went in there just to not get embarrassed. And I'm not saying we would have beaten Georgia, but the only way you're going to beat Georgia is go in there and go his old school, wide open offense.
Yeah.
and you just knew from the get go. Like we went, like our first drive was terrible. I mean, the game planning on that was like the run plays we were running. I'm like, we're coming out here just not to get beat bad. Last thing I will say, you mentioned 4th and 1 earlier. Like, should it have gone to Jarquez? Did Thorne make the right read? Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I know, put the ball in your best player's hands.
Yeah.
As many times as possible.
And I think you and I agree Jarquez is our best player, at least in the running back room. And
just
I'd
put the ball in his hands.
Yeah, give him a chance. Like, regardless, like, I mean, I saw some people that were like, well, it does make sense to, like, for Peyton because the edge rusher was, like, biting down on it. But I'm like, Jarquez could have made a move. You don't know. You didn't see the play out where it was in Jarquez's hands. Jarquez scored a touchdown where he should have been tackled in the backfield. Like, that's Jarquez for you. He's got a little magic in him.
When it's 4th down or the game's on the line, you are designing plays to get the ball in Jarquez's hands or KLS's hands right now. That's all you're doing.
Oh, yeah.
Those are the two things you're doing.
Yep.
If you want to pull that ball and not and then do a dump off to KLS on that play, that's okay. But the ball needs to go to your best 2 playmakers right now as much as possible.
Yeah.
And that is simple. I don't care how you make it happen, and they're not going to do it every time, but your best odds are get them the ball as many times as possible.
Absolutely. Like, even, one thing that kind of annoys me at this point is Jarquez should be getting the ball more. Like, in a game like this, I know, like, first half we did go to him a good bit, but he only finished with 13 handoffs, like 13 rushes the whole time. 13 against Georgia when he's probably
should be his minimum.
Oh, yeah. Easily minimum against Georgia.
And it's more situational. Like, if you told me 13, I could even maybe buy it. But it's the wrong times we're going away from him. Like, even in the red zone, I'm like, listen, guys, give him a try. Like, hand the ball to him, give him a try. And I know that if you run all the time, they're going to stack the box. I realize he's probably getting some yards because we do now have receivers that can loosen the defense up. But more than less, like, if you're like, hey, should we go more to him or less than him more? I mean, that's just and how many times, man, I feel like the turf trips him up. Like, he should have a touchdown probably that second drive of the game. It's like they got just a hand on him, and then he lost his balance. I'm like, he's gone if that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Then we got a field goal out of it.
That stinks. Like, sometimes it's, that happens, and then sometimes he scores a touchdown, and you're like, all right, like.
Oh, yeah, I'm not knocking him. It's like, but there's been several where it's just so close. And
yeah.
It's a game of inches, man. It really is a game of inches.
Really is.
And even in a 31-13 game, the inches in the first half could have turned that into a different ball game.
Oh, for sure. Well, I'll kind of wrap this up. I think our offense handled the ball well. We didn't turn the ball over, which, again, big success there. We only had, I think, 1 turnover against Oklahoma, and that was obviously the pick 6. So offense turnover-wise is trending in the right direction. We just need to find more ways to, and I think you get 2 weeks to prep for your next game. Like, that's huge for Auburn going into Missouri. And that's why I have a lot more hope in the second half of the season than I think maybe even some other Auburn fans do. Because I think they're really, I mean, I am a believer in we truly are getting better. And if we're getting better, there will be a team. And I'm hoping some team like Missouri where we catch them sleeping, because guess what? We're going to be having a noon game, and we come in ready to go, and we punch Missouri in the mouth. Maybe that's the case. I will mention special teams. I think special teams overall did pretty well. There were some big stars that came out of this one. DeMarcus Riddick. Good for him. He was one of our big defenders this whole game, and a young guy, freshman. But he also got a kickoff where he hit the dude, and I think it almost looked like the ball popped out because he hit him so hard. For me, it's fun to see all these young guys, because I think if you're talking to Hugh Freeze, you're talking to the staff, how do you build this team up and get from where we're at to a true rebuild? And I think it starts with the freshman class of this year, and they're getting more and more play time. I mean, look at Towns McGill. He's he's getting a lot of play time, obviously because of injury to Alex McPherson, but he's the kicker of the future, and he's getting some really great reps here. Any other thoughts before we kind of transition to bye week and thinking about that?
No, I think we've pretty much covered it all.
Yeah. To me, bye week, obviously health is a big one. Get the guys healthy, but I'm a big believer too in like the coaches looking inwardly at themselves and figuring out how can we get more out of these guys? How do we motivate these guys better? And Hugh Freeze mentioned one thing, and it's stuck with me, that I think is true. I think these players can be coached harder. You've probably been decently coached in high school, and nothing against the high school coaches, but college coaches, they already have a guy at a certain level. It's just taking them to that next level in the college world. And I think these coaches on Auburn staff need to look and figure out, how do we get these guys to play better? You're seeing it, like in some of it with like Peyton Thorne, Hugh Freeze going pretty hard on Peyton Thorne. You see him, the video on the sideline where he's yelling at him, he's coaching him up, right? That's tough, right? I if I'm being honest, I want to see more of that, because you're 2-4 at this point. Yell at dudes' faces and figure things out. I know that doesn't work for everybody, but like some guys, yelling in their face gets them to like straighten up and get their crap together. And at this point in the season, you got to get your crap together and win some games. Anything that you're particularly looking at in this upcoming week and leading into the Missouri week? Anything that you think Auburn should do to get back on track with winning?
I really don't know. I mean, it's because we've been, like so close. Like the Oklahoma game for sure. I mean, we should have won that one. So I think you definitely go back and look at, because it is a game of inches. Hey, what did we do here? What could we have done different? I think you do everything you can to make sure that Thorne and the receivers are always on the same page, because I mentioned earlier Cam Coleman, but in the Oklahoma game, if they're on the same page, there might have been a touchdown there on a deep pass.
Yeah.
And in the Georgia game, I mean, right before half, he was behind the DB.
Oh yeah.
But again, he's running a different route than Thorne. So who's wrong there? How do we get that right? Get more explosive plays. I don't know what you do, because like sometimes you gotta do it to make it happen, and you gotta get lucky. You need that win. If you can get that win under your belt, but you're just going to have to fake it till you make it. And there's going to have to be some leadership that steps up on the team. But like you said, a lot of these guys have not won a lot.
Yeah.
The guys that are older, I mean, they haven't won a lot. It may take luck, man. And that's not what you asked me, because you're talking about what do we do in the bye week. I don't know. But I think you definitely take the time to figure out what's your best path forward. How do we implement that?
Mm-hmm.
I think me and you both agree, more running.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I think Hugh's playing this balancing act, and I don't necessarily envy him in this, but it's not helping the season. I think he's trying to show these recruits, hey, we're going to throw it around, and here's the proof.
Which I think in the future, if you have, I'm thinking about, a couple of these guys next year will be sophomores, like Cam Coleman and Simmons. You're thinking, cool, like they're going to be an extra year in, and we're going to get a new batch of wide receivers too. And for all we know, some good transfers. I mean, you're talking about getting better and better wide receiver classes, and maybe that is the right approach. But like sometimes you gotta think about this year, and
you gotta win now too.
I mean,
like you have to win now.
I mean, for example, like
it's a balance.
Like I don't think, and people probably are going to disagree, I don't think Hugh's going to get fired this year, even if we lose every rest of the game, except hopefully not ULM. But if we do, I still don't think Hugh gets fired. Now, if he loses the locker room, that's a different story. But if the team is legitimately playing super hard, which so far they have played pretty well against them, any team we face, I mean, to me, that's signs of the true rebuild. It's just the wins haven't come yet. Let's go into just a couple other things, because, I mean, the bye week being super important with the players' health, the coaches reevaluating their game plans, figuring out things that they're doing right, coaching up the players. That's all gonna come into this next couple weeks. I do want to talk about, because we usually do our players to watch. I mean, there's some players this week that I'm gonna be watching come Missouri. One of those being Keontae Scott on their defense. I think he's kind of played outside for most of the season. He's playing inside, which I think is more of his natural, better position. But I want to see him come out, because he has not impressed me at all this season, and it's kind of sad because he used to be one of my favorite players on the defense, and he just hasn't been that this year. So, any particular players that you're going to be watching and hearing any kind of news come out of this week or so, bye week?
Yeah, I think you're gonna you're gonna look at the freshmen, right, and just look at if I understood your question correctly. But basically, as far as players go, I'm gonna be looking at freshman guys, because at this point, I don't know this. I've heard several people mention that some players doesn't look like they're giving it their all. And so I think if that's the case, and I don't want to accuse anybody of that, I don't know the game well enough to know that. I think at this point you go back in and you open a lot of the positions back up and say, look, may the best man win. I don't care if you're a 17-year-old kid.
Yeah,
I'm putting you out there, and I think the bad thing is that most probably 18-year-olds are probably our best players at almost every position. The recruiting class we brought in, and so it's taken them 6 games to maybe even be ready to even get on the field. So let's see what the second half of the season looks like if we start getting more of that talent out there. The bad thing about it, and I'm rambling now, but somebody put, KLS could be a 1,000-yard receiver, Hunter could be a 1,000-yard rusher, and we may have a losing season. And it's like,
I know, right?
Man, I don't want that to go to waste.
Yeah, what a wild thing if either one of those happen, and yet we have a losing season. Which the way things are kind of playing out, it's more likely than not that it happens, and that's kind of sad. It sucks for the players. As much as it's these guys are going for their individual things. It's still a team sport. Like Jarquez. As much as he wants to get that 1,000 yards, he wants this team to win, and that's tough. Like when you come to a team, and Jarquez has stuck around for a long time at Auburn, and just hurts a lot. So I hope these guys can turn things around in this bye week. Let's turn our attention to kind of what happened in the SEC, and really the top 10. There were lots of things that happened. The number 1 team, number 4 team, number 9 team, number 10 team, all lost this week. And this was the first time for essentially multiple AP top 5 teams to lose ever, which is wild to me. That just shows you when a team's ranked, they're ranked for a reason. But yet this last week was as much as Auburn kind of hurt from the loss against Georgia. Alabama, we've already talked about it, but them losing Arkansas, they came in and played tough. They did what they needed to, won, and against Tennessee. Are you kidding me? It's wild. Things like that just you would not honestly in most scenarios. You wouldn't see that happen. I even think of Lane Kiffin. He was in a mid-interview, and he's watching the last few minutes. Somebody's got it on TV at the Alabama game, and he's like, hold on. Alabama? How many timeouts do they have? He's trying to figure out and decipher the game. He's like, this is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And it truly was. Things like that don't happen. Hardly ever.
What would have been better if this would have happened last year in the backdrop, literally their school board is hanging from cranes. It's you just lost to a team that, and listen, we know Auburn's not having a good year. We can laugh about that too, but you just lost to a team that done their scoreboard's hanging in the air. Oh, that would have been even better. They had to. Vanderbilt fans had to get around Alabama fans to storm the field because there was more Alabama fans there than Vandy. They're having to go around them to get It's like, they probably had to get Bama fans to help them get the goalpost down because
It might have.
not a lot of Vandy fans there.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
And Arkansas did the same thing. They took down their field goal post after rushing the field against number 4 Tennessee, but I feel like that got overshadowed by Vandy doing it and then marching almost 3 miles down. They even went down like Broadway and dumped the
river.
field goal post, and I'm like, that's so good. Throw it in the river.
The SEC Shorts video was Vandy fans carrying the goalpost one way and Arkansas the other, and they kind of met and looked at each other, and then they did like the muscle man arm handshake.
Yep.
And just grinned and kept walking. So it was like, yeah, it was good times, man. Good for them. Like this will never happen again.
No.
I mean, it may be the largest SEC upset of all time. I mean,
it has to rival something like that. Vandy obviously in the last 10 years has always been at the bottom of the SEC. And to beat the literal number 1 team in the nation. I
mean, literally Vandy beating the number 1 team. I mean, what would be more shocking? I don't know another more shocking. Yeah, that's pretty shocking.
I do not know. A couple other things happening, and this is more NFL related. Bo Nix having himself quite a time in the Broncos. They are on a 4-game winning streak, and Bo Nix is leading that team. He's playing really well. I think he's figuring out the NFL game, and it's fun to see him play well. And obviously seeing him in orange-blue kind of feels a little, reminiscent of his time back at Auburn. And then Tank Bigsby, my goodness. If you haven't gone and watched a couple of his big runs, it was wild. He had a 65-yard absolute just torched the defense. And that's the kind of thing, as much as obviously Jarquez is a great running back, Tank Bigsby, man, I hope we as Auburn fans, I tried to as much as possible, appreciate how good Tank Bigsby was when he was at Auburn, because he is definitely showing up even in the NFL and playing really well. So
I got lucky. I had Tank on my bench in fantasy and David Montgomery for the Lions is my normal starter, and they're on a bye week. So I said, all right, here we go. We're putting Tank in out of necessity. And I want to claim that I know what I'm doing, but I don't. But I got lucky because he went off.
He did.
He has, I saw so I keep up with that because he's on my fantasy, and they're saying he's probably going to become their new tailback number 1.
Really? Good for him.
I mean, this is Yahoo Sports predicting that, but they said he's probably done enough now to become RB1. So,
I mean, if there's a game to prove it, and you go, I think he had 101 yards rushing, and even had some from passing. I mean, goodness, you can see the versatility of Tank Bigsby.
Well, and even the game before that, I think he had 90 yards on 7 carries. So it's the 2 games combined. They're he's done enough to prove his worth. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
I love just seeing guys thriving in the NFL, and it is literally some of the best out there. And Bo Nix and Tank Bigsby are taking it to him, which is pretty fun. Any other final thoughts before we get out of here, Jared?
No, I think we covered a lot of things.
Yeah,
I've rambled enough, AJ.
Well, Jared, I genuinely hope the second half of the season is a turning point, particularly this bye week. And I think Auburn has shown a lot of good improvement over these last 4 weeks, despite the losses. And I think if we can somehow make a mental shift into that winning mentality, and I think it's going to have to come down to probably a really tough win, hopefully in the next few weeks against somebody like Missouri or Kentucky, and just getting a win. I think for the team's morale itself, we really need that, and us as fans. I mean, it's tough. Your team's 2-4, and you got to rise up out of that. And I'm a firm believer in Auburn being that big underdog threat, and pretty much any game we can come out swinging. And I think in just about any of these games. Maybe not Alabama, but we'll see. Hey, Alabama's lost too. It's possible. It is possible. So, Jared, before we get out of here, how can the people stay in touch with you?
You find me on Facebook under my name, Jared Davis.
And you can find me on X at AJAY, JAY_. It's always great to be an Auburn Tiger and War Eagle.
War Eagle.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode on the E2C Network. On your way out, I want to remind you to stop by e2cnetwork.com. It's your one-stop shop for all our content across our podcast, YouTube channel, and much more. To stay up to date with us, make sure you're following social media accounts such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. While our content here may always be Auburn sports heavy, if it's orange and blue, it's what we do. War Eagle.